Hey everyone, how's it going? Dezpulse here. Today I just want to touch upon a subject I know that there isn't too much information about, but I noticed a lot of people talking about it on the forums, and that is the racial passives, in Legion. So the human racial passive is the only one I'm aware of getting a tweak. Basically, instead of removing all movement impairing effects, they're changing it to match up with Will of the Forsaken, the undead racial passive, a little more. So it's only going to get you out of stuns from now on. So, and people are still not too happy with this because obviously in PvP, stuns are more prevalent. They're more prevalent and they're the more frequent form of CC. And of course, Will of the Forsaken gets you out of charm, fear, and sleep effects. And that's less prevalent. So people are still saying humans have the advantage in that racial passive sense. So in this video, I'm going to go through almost every class, pretty much every race except for Worgen. And I'm going to show you and kind of explain my point of view on why each class has their own advantages to PvP with their racial passives. The idea has been floating around that racial passives should be, minor things like, increase movement speed and not so much advantage in PvP. I totally disagree with that. That's what gives WoW its magic. The one thing with humans is the passive for increasing versatility. As we know, versatility increases the amount of damage you do, the amount of healing you receive, and reduces the damage you take. That's also on the human passives, which is pretty strong. I mean, they got great racial passives in this game, but we're going to go ahead and take a look at the other racial passives, and I hope you guys by the end of this video see that it's not all about the human racial passive being overpowered. Let's get right into this video and start looking over it. So let's start off with the dwarves. The dwarves are a great race, and their racial passives are very strong. Now, if we take a quick look here, you know that their racial passives can be good. You got your frost resistance, of course, your language, which whatever. First off, you have Might of the Mountain, which increases critical strike bonus damage and healing by 2%. Not too shabby, but let's be honest, that's not why we're here. You, me, and the grand piano in the living room know we're here for Stone Form. Removes all poison, disease, cure, magic, and bleed effects, and reduces all physical damage taken by 10% for 8 seconds. Now, I know this only lasts for 8 seconds every 2 minutes. It doesn't get you out of stuns, but while druids and rogues and warlocks and priests and whatever are stacking their diseases, curses, bleed effects on you, you can get out of it. You can just wipe those all off. In my opinion, this move, and it reduces damage taken by 10% for 8 seconds, and this, in my opinion, this might actually be better than the human racial passive, because now they gotta stack all those dots on you. They're not doing damage with those dots, while as, yes, you got out of the stun, but you still got the dots on you. With this one, they gotta put them back on, and if you're a type of class that can get away, like a hunter, for example, it might be a little bit harder for them to get back at you to stack all those dots back on. This is definitely one of the strongest racial passives in my opinion, and it's at the top of my list for one of my favorite racial passives. It's very strong, and if properly used and macroed in PvP, it can be very strong. And I don't know why everyone's focusing around the human racial being overpowered. If you look at the forums like I have, this racial passive is a force to be reckoned with when paired with a player that knows what they're doing and knows how to play their class. Next up, we have the Night Elf. The Night Elf is a great rogue class, and it's great at every other class. It's very, in my opinion, the Night Elf excels at melee classes. One of the reasons, of course, is one of the racial passives called Quickness, increases your chance to dodge, melee, and ranged attacks by 2%, and your movement speed by 2%, but that's only 2%. The next racial passive for Night Elf here is Touch of Elune, or Elune, whatever, increases your haste by 1% during the night, and increases your critical strike by 1% during the day. Yeah, that's cool, but, let's get into Shadow Meld now. Shadow Meld, I'm not even going to explain. You all know Shadow Meld. The reason Shadow Meld is amazing is because you can go in and out of combat with it. Why is this good? Why? Like, who cares? Like, they know I'm there. They're just going to AoE me out of combat. No, that's not what it's used for. It's great for something like rogues, because let's say you got dots on you, you got a warlock coming at you, he's charging up his chaos bolt. You know what you can do? If you're good enough, you can Cloak of Shadows and then Shadow Meld, and you watch that chaos bolt charge up and it will not go off because you are out of combat. And from there, if you have a macro, you can re-stealth. That's right, in combat you can Shadow Meld as long as you take the dots off first, and then you can re-stealth and reopen on that person. And if you play a rogue, you know that when you open from stealth, that's when you have the most burst. So in the case of rogues, it's essentially like a free vanish. As long as you don't have any dots on you, you can enter stealth, reopen on the target, then you can blind them, vanish, or sprint and re-stealth, reopen on the target. It's a very good racial passive if you know how to use it in PvP, and not many people use it effectively. In fact, I pretty much never see it other than when, for example, hunters in Eye of the Storm or just camping towers, or same in Arathi Basin. They're just kind of shadow melded in one corner. But it's very useful if you get creative with it. It can get you out of combat, back into stealth to open without using your vanish in the case of rogues. And it's incredibly powerful if you know how to use it, and it can make or break the difference in a fight. And in no particular order whatsoever, on third on our list here we have the Gnome. The Gnome has some unique racial passives that we're just going to touch upon for a second here. Expansive Mind increases your resource by 5%. And that is really cool. I mean, PvE or PvP, in this case it says mana because this Gnome here is a mage, but 5% can be a big increase in DPS if you get one more skill off. Or even if it doesn't mean the difference of a skill, it will mean the difference of by the time your resource regenerates a little bit, you'll be able to get that skill off faster. Ah yes, now Escape Artist. Escape the effects of any immobilization or movement speed reduction effect. Like Roots? How is that not good for PvP? I mean, it's not a stun, but in my experience, I get immobilized or slowed by a movement impairing effect probably just as much as I get stunned. If not, then really close. I mean, this, in my opinion, is on par with the human racial passive, and there's not much else I can really say about it. I mean, it's one or the other. It's A or B, apple or orange. It's all on your preference in that case. Most people probably would pick the human racial passive, but you know what? I mean, you can get slowed and die as a human, you know what I mean? It's trivial at this point. And I think that, everyone wants to be a human to look nice and be a night elf and blood elf to look pretty. I think that's also a big factor in why certain races are so popular. And to be honest, it's kind of dumb. But, from a non-elitist, I guess, point of view, you have to love how your character looks. That's why they introduced transmogs. And, that you gotta play the game to how you find it fit. But in terms of this, I think the Gnome racial passive is right on par with the humans. Next up, we have the Draenei. Now, Warrior's really the only class I haven't fully played beginning to end, and I'm not sure why, but in Legion, I think I'm going to start a Warrior, and if I chose to go Alliance, I would pick this race. Their racial passives, in my opinion, are top-notch. I actually would go as far as saying, for Warrior and DK, I mean, they are the best, in my opinion. And the reason for that is you just saw their Heroic Presence increases your strength, agility, and intellect by 1, and it scales with your level. So if you're really let's say a warrior, you're getting your most valuable stat increased by even more every level just on a racial passive, which is absolutely stellar in my opinion. But if that doesn't rattle your pancakes, then maybe Gift of the Naru will. Heals the target for 20% of the caster's total health over 5 seconds. That is very strong, especially on a already powerful damaging class like a warrior. It's a very quick and efficient heal, And if I end up playing Alliance, I've got to be a Draenei just for the 2 racial passes of increasing strength and the quick 5-second 20% HP heal. Going down the list, we have the Pandaren. Now, I personally don't like this race at all just because I thought it was horrendously unimaginative that they were even added to the game. But off that topic, Epicurean, your love of food allows you to receive 100% more stats from well-fed effects. Now in Battlegrounds and World PvP, this is great. Okay, people already go insane in PvP for their buffs, and the fact that the pandas get to benefit twice as much from food is a good buff. I mean, again, comparing it to the humans, it doesn't get you out of stuns, but at the same time, with the right kind of food, you're getting double the effect. The pandas also have Quaking Palm, which is a 4-second stun. Please tell me how that's not good in PvP. I'm not even going to say any more about it. The fact that, getting out of stun is overpowered, but, just having a racial passive that's a 4-second stun, that's okay. Which it is okay in my opinion, but you know what? Pandas have a 4-second stun. That's it. Now I'm going to move right onto the Horde. I'm going to skip the Worgens because Worgens, I think, got the short end of the stick when it comes to racial passives. So here we are now at the Orc racial passives. The first one we're going to start with is Hardness. Duration of stun effects reduced by an additional 20%. That actually used to be 25%. But that is great. It's not a trinket, no, but it's all stun effects by 20%. I think that is incredibly strong. Now, everyone knows about this. The notorious Blood Fury increases attack power by 40 by 15 seconds. It only says 40 because I'm level 1 here, or level 55. I'm a low level here. It scales with your level, and I'll show you that in a second. But Blood Fury, if your target is low and you got like a DK or Rogue or Warrior, you can end a fight faster than a knife fight in a phone booth. Blood Fury is an absolutely phenomenal and powerful racial passive that gives a character a lot of burst really quickly. So I just pulled up my Hunter really quick just so you can see how Blood Fury scales. In WoD right now at level 100, it gives me an extra 345 attack power, which definitely increases my burst DPS when I need it most. And now we have the Undead race. The Undead race is probably the most compared to the humans, and especially with their racial passives. But what we're going to do right now, we're going to take our time with this. And because the Undead, for my Warrior in Legion when I start one, I'm really considering Undead because they have some really, really unique racial passives, and the Undead racial passives in vanilla were insanely powerful with Cannibalize and the Will of the Forsaken, and now is no different. It's still very powerful, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here by getting into Touch of the Grave. Your attacks and damaging spells have a chance to drain the target, dealing 17 shadow damage and healing you for the same amount. Additionally, you can breathe underwater indefinitely. So 17 shadow damage scales with your level. This is great. This can be compared to the human racial passive for versatility. Now, versatility, the only difference is it decreases the damage you take also. This does not do that, but it gives you extra damage that scales with your level, like versatility, and it heals you for the same, like versatility does. This is essentially the Undead's version of versatility. Now, it doesn't reduce damage taken like versatility does, but Cannibalize kind of counters that by giving you another heal there. You just eat a corpse to refill your life. So, Will of the Forsaken now. Will of the Forsaken removes Charm, Fear, and Sleep effects. Not a stun. Less common than stuns in PvP, of course. But you know what? It is what it is. It's going to happen. And there's no sense in complaining about it. It's still a very potent talent in PvP. It's very comparable to the human and competitive with the rest of the passives we've seen so far. And you know what? The fact that Undead can have increased healing, I think, kind of makes up for that. If they can get away, they can go eat a corpse that's been killed. And easier said than done, I know, but you know what? I think it's still great, and this is definitely one of my top picks if I make a Horde Warrior in Legion. Now, winding down on our list here, we have the Taurens. So, Taurens are a very good race. Endurance, their racial passive, increases your stamina by 2, scales with level. So, hello tanks, you get more stamina. I mean, how is that not amazing? You just get more life just for being a giant cow. That's very viable in PvP and PvE if you like to play both. You know what? Again, if you're not the type of person that's just like, yeah, I want to be a pretty blood elf or whatever, you know, consider Tauren if you want to tank or anything, just simply because they've got increased stamina, which can be very viable in both PvP and PvE. Brawn is a great racial, increases critical strike bonus damage and healing, increased by 2%. Come on now. Does anybody see a difference here between the dwarf racial and the Tauren racial? They're keeping it balanced here. I mean, this is great. You get it's 2%, granted, it's not huge. It's not insane, and again, oh, you know, but that still can't get me out of stun. No, but you know what? 1 out of every 100 times that's going to get you out of a thing. You know, the real magic with Tauren, I'm going to say, in my opinion, is War Stomp. Yes, it's a half a second cast, which is really quick. I mean, not too many people can really silence or counter that. That's a really quick stun, you know, given internet lag and whatever. Chances are that's not going to get just kicked or something. But, I mean, it's a 0.5 second cast, stuns up to 5 enemies in an 8 yard for 2 seconds. It's not about the stun, I know. Like, what are you even mentioning that for? 2 seconds is nothing. I can't even get away in that time. This is more of an interrupt, in my opinion. This is a great talent because, again, for those heavy-hitting moves, the Fire Mage is going to be... You better believe if you're a tank, that Fire Mage is going to be wrecking you in Legion. You need to interrupt that before you get away or before you melt his face. You're going to War Stomp him, because you're going to interrupt that giant fire move that's going to take away 50% plus of your HP, and it's just a passive talent. Your class is going to have other stuff like that to interrupt and whatnot, silence him. It's a racial passive that is being overlooked, and it's used for an interrupt, not necessarily a stun to stun somebody and get some damage in, but just to interrupt big moves that would otherwise cause big damage to come onto you. I personally think War Stomp is underrated, underused, and underutilized today, but it is a very strong ability if used properly, and in conjunction possibly with a macro, it can really screw up someone's rotation and give you the edge in a fight. Next up, we have the Trolls. So, Trolls are probably one of the best races for casters, and I say that because of a few things. First off, let's start with the Voodoo Shuffle. Reduces the duration of all movement and parrying effects by 20%. Yeah, that's probably really good, right? Especially if you're a caster, you don't want to be hit by movement and parrying effects too often. 20% is 1/5 of their time. If it's 5 seconds, you're only going to be stuck there for 4 seconds. It's very good, and again, underrated for sure. Going over regeneration really quickly. Health regeneration rate increased by 10%. 10% of your total health regeneration may continue during combat. Extra regeneration, it's nice to have, but it's nothing crazy. The real magic with Trolls, as we know, is berserking. Increases your haste by 15% for 10 seconds. Great for pretty much every single class in the game. Now, of course, haste also helps reduce your global cooldowns, which is something I bet that pretty much nobody uses it for. If you're in a tight situation, you're like, oh man, I'm going to die, 5 seconds left, pop it. It'll help it get done faster and maybe pull you out of that situation. Who knows? But I think it's a very underrated ability. And you know what? To get out of stun effects, this is a tight one. This is an incredibly useful move, and it can absolutely save your life and make you win a fight. The Blood Elf. I almost didn't put Blood Elf in this. I felt it was, they kind of got a little bit shafted compared to other classes. Obviously, you know, really the only passive worth mentioning for Blood Elf is the Arcane Torrent. It silences all enemies for 2 seconds and restores 3% of your resource, in this case a mage, its mana. This is useful. I feel like it was way more useful in BC when you actually used mana and your mana went down, and you know, there'd be times when you needed that extra few heals or few spells. Not in WoD. Not sure if the resource pool is going to be any different in Legion, but I mean, it's good for a silence. 2 seconds is nothing, you know, same as the Tauren's War Stomp. It's more of an interrupt, can be very effective in PvP. In this case, you know, I would definitely say the Last Man Standing, for PvP anyway, would be better than Arcane Torrent. Again, also because mana doesn't seem to really be an issue in PvP. And last we have the Goblin. So I think this is probably one of the least played races. Definitely, I would even say the most ugly. But anyway, they have some of the strongest racials in the game. Primarily their rocket jump. Now, exactly what does rocket jump do? Activates your rocket belt, because apparently you got one of those on at all times, to jump forward. Other effects which slow the rate of falling cannot be used within 10 seconds after using this ability. What does that mean? Well, if you're a warrior, you could, when they first came out, you could heroic leap and rocket jump, and if you were carrying the flag across Warsong Gulch, that was a lot of distance traveled very quickly. Plus, you can charge. Now they kind of put a 10-second cooldown on heroic leap after you rocket jump. I would say this is still amazing for warriors without a doubt. It's only 10 seconds. You can still get some great distance by heroic leaping, charging, and then, you know, if you're carrying the flag across Warsong Gulch, for example, it's only 10 seconds. If you got a healer on you, you'll probably live and be able to rocket jump yet again. So I would definitely say this is one of the stronger racial passives in the game. Amazing for PvP. Depending on the role you want to play. I mean, this is something that's overlooked. Maybe people don't even know, that's why they don't play Goblin. But this is incredibly strong, and this is a very close pick for me if I were to roll a warrior on the Horde faction. Undead or Goblin, kind of leaning towards Goblin because of this racial passive. And in case you missed Rocket Barrage at the beginning here, Rocket Barrage just launches a rocket that deals damage to enemies. The damage scales with your level. It does share a cooldown with Rocket Jump. Not sure why, but it does. I guess they had to do that to kind of balance it out, because it's an extra attack that does damage. You know, again, for a racial passive, why not? You know, there's nothing else you can really say about that. But if you know, since they share the 1.5-minute cooldown, I would definitely go for the Rocket Jump in PvP. Now, Better Living Through Chemistry is a racial passive on Goblin that is overlooked. It only increases your alchemy by 15, but the tooltip when you're creating a Goblin says it also increases potion healing. Now, increased potion healing in PvP. Now, obviously that won't work in Arena, but Battlegrounds, World PvP, even PvE, if you're not using healing potions, you really need to start using them. They can make a huge difference in a fight. I'm going to let you in on a little secret that you might not know about healing potions and whatnot in WoW right now anyway. So far it hasn't been fixed. So healing potions are made from first aid. Rejuvenation potions are made with alchemy. They don't share a cooldown. You can have a macro to pop a healing and a rejuvenation potion. And with the Goblin's racial passive of increased healing, that is very good. I mean, you can do it now with any class, and you can surprise people by getting a giant chunk of healing back, and they're just like, what? Test it out. Tell me what you think. But let's keep it between us, because the last thing I want is for Blizzard to take that out of the game. It might have just been an oversight. Who knows? But anyway, that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. feel free to share this video, leave a like, leave me a comment below, let me know what you thought of it. Hopefully you learned something. And until the next time, guys, take care, and we'll see you in the next video.